One of the coolest things when you do become a professional wrestler is coming up with a finisher or signature move. Like, even from when you were a kid, maybe it was the Stone Cold Stunner or the Rock Bottom or the RKO, you watch them and you think, man, one day I would love to have something like that. And if you do decide to follow your dreams, you actually get that option to a certain point. Because when you do indeed get to the big leagues, be it because somebody backstage thinks so or it's part of a story, you may be given a move to do that you don't want to do, but you've got to do it because otherwise your ass will be fired. And that's why I'm Simon Miller, this is What Culture, and this is 10 finishing moves that wrestlers hated to do and pretty much thought sucked. Number 10, TERRI Runnels and the BRONCOBUSTER. When TERRI Runnels first arrived in the then WWF in 1996, she was known as Marlena, and she was Goldust's manager. And you remember that double act. They were really, really weird, but for some reason, they were really, really compelling, and you just couldn't work out why. They also seem to have come from Hollywood, and I guess that's just what happened. When the company did go full Attitude Era though, we all know what happened to the women's division, and TERRI Runnels was told, okay, cool, now you have to start dressing in skimpy clothing, and we would also like you to start doing the BRONCOBUSTER to your opponents. And if you don't know what the BRONCOBUSTER is, it's when you set up your other person in the corner in the turnbuckle, they're sat down, and you run at them groin first, and then you just groin away in their face. I can see why you wouldn't want to do it. So recently on social media, when Runnels herself was reminded of doing this move, and the clip I am referencing was to Jerry Lawler, she just came out straight and said, you know what, I hated doing that, and in fact it wasn't even my choice. Now I don't know about you, but that makes me feel all oogly boogly down in my stomach, because you'd have to imagine there was some reservations there, but given the era, there's the word, given the era we were in, TERRI Runnels was told, I'm sorry, that's what we need you to do. Sometimes you gotta call a spade a spade. 90s wrestling when it comes to females is basically unwatchable. Number 9, Matt Hardy and the leg drop. This is so weird, right? And kind of sums up life. Think of all the crazy things you have seen Matt Hardy do. He's jumped off ladders, he's jumped off cages, but the one thing that he kind of regrets doing is the leg drop when he used to climb up the turnbuckle, climb up the ropes and go, ah, and then give a leg drop to someone that was lying on the floor. It seems so pedestrian. The thing is, a combination of doing that so many times and the one he gave to Edge at Unforgiven 2005, when he did do it off a steel cage, caused so much compression to his back that and his pelvis basically fused together, and it left Matt Hardy unable to work, and it left Matt Hardy needing some surgery. It was so bad at one point, Matt thought this was going to end his pro wrestling career, but thankfully after getting medical help and changing up his style, in 2020, where I am right now, he's likely in the best shape of his life. And I want to say, as a Matt Hardy fan, that makes me very happy. He's my favorite thing about All Elite Wrestling. But there you go, a leg drop, a leg drop. Number 8, X-PAC and the BRONCOBUSTER. Now I don't think X-PAC, also known as Sean Waltman, hates the BRONCOBUSTER in the same way that TERRI Runnels did. In fact, he used it as a signature move for years, and he got good evasions and good reactions from the crowd. But there is one incident that happened on the independent scene, which I'm 99% sure made him go, I don't want to ever do that again. Happening in 2013, Waltman did indeed go to perform this, but there was some kind of mishap which meant he ripped apart his anus. And while you're probably going to laugh at that little snigger, I get it, we're all children, he lost so much blood, he feared for his life and had to go to hospital. And I don't know about you, but I never want to die because I cracked open my ass. So that just goes to show that even the most simplest and apparently safe moves in wrestling are actually dangerous, and because X-PAC himself is clearly mad, he still does this move, or at least he was recently. I would have been like, I don't want to ever even think about it, but he's a bigger dude than me, the BRONCOBUSTER. Who would have thunk it? Number 7, Hulk Hogan and the leg drop. This leg drop, man, I tell you, we've already talked about Matt Hardy, and now we move on to one of the biggest stars the pro wrestling business has ever seen, and it was Hogan's decision to use the leg drop that has actually caused him to have, honestly, about 75,000 back surgeries. It is so many when you hear about it and see the pictures where there's like metal coming out of his spine. It will scare the crap out of you. It's also doubly bonkers because the Hulkster isn't really someone who is known for his bumping style. If you go out there and kind of watch the matches he did in New Japan, the dude could work far more than you think he could, but the reason he did that is because he thought he was protecting his body. And yet years and years and years and years and years of doing the leg drop of doom that we all loved when we were kids, it ruined him wrestling. Hogan even confessed this in an interview with the LA Times in 2019, where he said 35 years plus of doing that leg drop did my back in and I regret it. He even said he should have used a sleeper. That's right, a stupid sleeper, but he got it. As long as he could have got it over and people would have been like, oh no, the Hulkster's putting in the sleeper, all you have to do is just giving someone a hug. That's all it's been, and no one's ever been injured from giving someone a hug, apart from, when that hug is done, your partner turns around to you and says, it's over, and your heart is crushed. But we don't need to talk about my personal life. Number 6, Jeff Hardy and the Swanton bomb. I mean, this kind of just sums up all the other entries together, but you add in Jeff Hardy, who may be the biggest high-risk taker in the history of wrestling, and yeah, it all just makes sense. But doing an interview in 2018, he directly referenced the Swanton bomb and said, yeah, eventually, that's what did me over, because what the hell was I thinking? I was climbing up to a great height and then flipping myself right onto my back. Sometimes I'd hit my opponent, sometimes I'd hit the mat, but sometimes I decided to do this off a giant ladder and went crashing through a table, and eventually Mother Nature turned around and said, okay, now I'm gonna flub you up. Jeff also admitted that he'd stopped doing this maneuver on live events because his lower back was just in so much pain, he wasn't able to perform like he wanted to. The good thing there, however, is that hopefully it means Hardy is trying to prolong his career, and let's face it, we don't want anyone in pain. And if we're talking about bump cards, you've heard that before, every wrestler's got a bump card. Jeff Hardy must be about 72,000 miles past his. He's allowed a few years where he just wrestles and does headlocks, or just wrestles calmly. Number 5, Sid Vicious and that big boot. When you see Sid Vicious and hear some of the stories, he doesn't sound like a guy that you could easily tell what to do. In fact, he'd probably turn around and go, don't talk to me like that. I'm the ruler of the world. You've never seen Sid cut a promo, that's what he used to do. But in 2001, when he was performing for WCW, some idiot decided, oh Sid, I know you're like 32 feet tall, but you need to start doing aerial maneuvers. Obviously Justice/Vicious turned around and said, I don't think that's my bag, baby. But he was forced into it, and do you know what happened when he decided to start doing a big boot off the rope? He tried it once, and it is the most disgusting and awful wrestling injury you've ever seen in your life, to the point I close my eyes, because that way I can pretend it never happened. Going down at the Sin pay-per-view against Scott Steiner, what essentially happened to Sid's leg was that it snapped in two. And if you're an idiot like me, and you go and watch this footage, yes, you can see the bone come out your skin, and then you have to take your face and just wash it in water and hope that everything's gonna be okay, but it's not. Eventually he had to have a rod put in his leg, and he was walking around with a cane for ages, and really this wasn't worth it, and probably ended Sid Vicious's in-ring career. All because someone decided he should be a high flyer. I'm all for that flippy shib, but pick your spots, people. This was the wrong one. Number 4, Jon Moxley, or then Dean Ambrose, and Dirty Deeds. Jon Moxley has changed his finishing move up over the years, and I actually think that's quite smart, because much like a Chris Jericho, you always want to keep people guessing. But when we focus on his WWE career, there were very significant reasons for doing so. When it comes to the Dirty Deeds, and when he left World Wrestling Entertainment, it's because he hated that company so much and he wanted to do a more devastating version of it. So yeah, he now does the paradigm shift, or the death killer, whatever the hell he calls it in Japan, where he actually picks the person up, whereas in WWE it was just a double arm DDT, and that was fine. I mean, the DVT's been watered down and it never should have done, but it kind of worked, but it lacked the impact that he has now. Before all of this though, he was doing a headlock driver, and it was quite curious that one day that just stopped. But as it turned out, when the then Dean Ambrose was doing an interview, he revealed, look, I gave it to Randy Orton one time, and he's so tall, when I tried to perform it, it just went wrong, and that made me realize, man, I need something I can hit on anybody. So that went out the door, and in came the Dirty Deeds. I would say the approach he has to it all now is the best one so far, so that's a double thumbs up and a tick in the box. But now you know, he almost killed Randy Orton, and he hates WWE, and that's why he moved away from all of this slight exaggeration. Number 3, Seth Rollins and a stupid pedigree. Now this one stands to reason, because the pedigree is a great move, but it is so synonymous with Triple H, you'd have to be crazy to try and take it on. This wasn't Seth Rollins' fault. In 2015, Seth was told, look, you can't do the curb stomp anymore because we're worried about kids doing it on the outside and nobody wants that. So as you're having like a feud with Triple H, or he was in the Authority at the time, why don't you start doing the pedigree as a nod to the love of your life? And that would of course have been Hunter Hearst Helmsley. And they did have that match at WrestleMania, but when we got to the end of that, Seth was like, well, I've got to stop doing it now because this has come to its natural conclusion, and he was 100% correct. He then went back to the ripcord knee before everybody saw sense and went, screw it, just do the stomp. And the reason I bring this one up is because Rollins did an interview with the Mirror over here in the UK, and he said these words. They came out of his mouth. He was like, well, for a while it was kind of cool. You know, we all respect and we all look up to Triple H, but it didn't really felt like it was mine. It felt like I was wearing somebody else's pants. He didn't say that, but that was his point. And look, sometimes paying homage to another wrestler's maneuver actually works. Like, I don't know why Kevin Owens doing the stunner is okay, but this one, it was too on the nose. I guess it's because Stone Cold gave it to Kevin Owens, whereas the pedigree was part of a narrative, and that was always gonna hit a natural conclusion. Number 2, Christian and the Unprettier. Now clearly Christian didn't hate his version of the inverted DDT because he did it throughout his WWE and TNA career, but what he didn't enjoy was the fact it was called the Unprettier. I mean, that is a pretty rubbish name. For you see, it used to be called the Impaler until Michael Cole heard the Hardy Boys and Edge and Christian joking about it backstage, saying, oh, we're gonna call it the Unprettier. And because WWE can be nasty, they went, oh, we're gonna do it too. And that's what they did. And even though Christian was like, no, don't call it that, the Impaler. It's like a badass name, we should go with that. They went, we've already made up my mind, you're gonna be unpretty. True story, kinda. And this is why when he did return to the company, he went straight to Vince McMahon and said, look, I got a new idea here, I'm trying to go in a certain direction. Why don't we call it the Kill Switch? And the boss loved it so much, from that day onwards, this was the name. I mean, that is a lot better. The Unprettier and the Kill Switch, this one wins. So it goes to show it's not actually always the move that people hate, but it's the name behind it, and a name is so important. Again, if I just said this dude's gonna do the Unprettier and you hadn't seen it, you probably think he's gonna, I don't know, look in the mirror and just ruffle up his hair and look a bit bad for a while. That ain't a finishing move. That's just being a human. Number 1, Harley Race and that diving headbutt. When Harley Race literally decided to start using his head in the 70s and 80s, he had no idea that the amount of trauma that would build up would force him into an early retirement. And to make matters worse, so many people were inspired by Harley Race, they started doing it too, and it was just a downhill spiral. I mean, look at some of the examples we have here. The Dynamite Kid and Chris Benoit both adopted this move, and their circumstances are tragic to say the least. And in 2016, when Daniel Bryan retired, one of the worries was, oh my gosh, he did the diving headbutt too. It's one of those things that should be banned. If we're banning pile drivers, which we are, I think we should ban the diving headbutt. Yes, you can call me a dad, but I worry about people. The King has even come out and said that he regrets taking on this move and that he tells the Stars of Tomorrow not to do it, but as ever, they don't listen to him, even though he's flipping Harley Race, or he was, rest in peace. Especially today when we know so much about concussions, it's all about repetitive action and the impact on your skull. If you're gonna do this, why not just get a steel chair and wham that into your brain instead? So listen, if you are an upcoming wrestler, don't do the diving headbutt, put your health first. If anyone gives you grief, you say, well, Simon from What Culture said it was okay. We got it. Know of any other wrestlers who hated their finishing moves or any maneuvers in their moveset? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video, share the video, and subscribe to What Culture Wrestling. Then head to whatculture.com where you can read articles like this, follow What Culture on Twitter, What Culture WWE, and watch more videos here on What Culture Wrestling. My name is Simon from What Culture. Thank you very much for watching me, and now I'm gonna go to the Broken Skull Ranch and see my friend Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's merchandise. I just bought it, but I would love to be his pal.